In this Diablo 4 video, I'm going to be showing you our perfected Shadowblade build, which is a level 70 plus of our previous Shadowblade build, and this one is aimed at World Tiers 4 and showing you how to clear higher level Nightmare dungeons. This build continues our level 50 Shadowblade build and makes the necessary adjustments to efficiently clear Tier 4 content. These changes include swapping out some passive skills and our basic skill, as well as modifying a couple of legendary aspects. Just like the original Shadowblade build, the main focus is the use of Twisting Blades in combination with Shadow Imbuement, create a chain reaction effect, and explode big packs of enemies. This build is very engaging and fun to play, as it motivates you to move around the battlefield and to constantly use different active skills, depending on the type of situation you're facing. The main difference you'll notice in Tier 4 difficulty is the increased amount of damage that enemies deal to you. Damage output is not an issue for this build, so we'll mainly focus on making sure that we're very tanky, and that we can survive any attack and keep going, even when clearing content many levels above our own, such as in Nightmare dungeons. Once you hit Tier 4, you'll want to start thinking about min-maxing to get the most out of your build, and that starts with skills. Thanks to the increased affixes on ancestral equipment, in combination with some amazing Paragon glyphs, you'll be able to kill enemies much faster, allowing you to mainly rely on consuming shadows to recover energy. This will free up some points that were used for energy regeneration that can now be slotted into other skills. One of the most notable changes when compared to our previous build is the replacement of Invigorating Strike for Puncture. The main reason for this change is that you can use Puncture from a distance while Invigorating Strike is a melee skill. This will allow you to generate energy from a safe distance and to trigger some passives before a difficult fight, such as the Aspect of Might or the Aspect of the Protector. Another important change is that thanks to the Exploit glyph, we'll be able to replace blended Shadow Imbuement in favor of mixed Shadow Imbuement, greatly increasing our overall damage. Our specialization will remain the same as the previous build. We'll be keeping the Preparation specialization, which allows you to quickly reduce the cooldown of Shadow Clone by spamming Twisting Blades. Equipment is the most important part of any endgame build, and it's important to understand that it's a long-term goal. As soon as you reach Tier 4, you'll want to transition into Ancestral items, and then you want to start looking for specific affixes in your equipment. While I recommend a couple of uniques for this build, they will probably take a lot of farming, so try to use legendary aspects to adjust to your needs while you farm levels and get better gear. As a general note on affixes, try to prioritize cooldown reduction over other stats, as it directly affects how often you can use Shadow Imbuement, Dash, and Shadow Clone. Your second priority should be damage, as we'll mainly be using legendary aspects to increase our survivability. Another important thing to notice is that when looking for stats, you want to make sure you're fulfilling your Paragon rare node requirements. Some rare nodes have very high requirements, and equipment is what allows you to fulfill these. These bonuses often double the rare node effect, so for example, getting an equipment piece with plus 100 dexterity might unlock one or more node bonuses, giving you a massive bonus as a result. Moving along to equipment, we'll handle Helmet first, and here we have the Aspect of Might. This aspect provides you a massive 20% damage reduction when you hit an enemy using Puncture, allowing you to trigger it from a distance before you begin a fight. This is a great option during your early 70s, allowing you to better handle the increased damage of Tier 4 enemies. Another good option here is Aspect of the Deflecting Barrier. This becomes a great option after you find Temerity, as you'll constantly have a barrier active. And lastly, Mangler's Aspect, and this is another great alternative, allowing you to daze enemies almost all the time thanks to the Exploit glyph. Affixes you want to look for on your helmet are cooldown reduction, ranks to Shadow Imbuement, maximum energy, maximum life, and total armor. Moving to the chest, we'll be using Aspect of Disobedience. This aspect massively increases your armor value. Thanks to the constant AoE damage, you'll be able to get max stacks as soon as the fight begins. Affixes you want to look for on your chest are Imbuement skill damage, shadow damage, maximum life, and total armor. For gloves, we'll be using the Accelerating Aspect. This aspect will greatly increase your attack speed whenever you critically strike with your Twisting Blades, which is all the time. The increased attack speed is great for both Puncture and Twisting Blades, increasing the rate at which you generate and spend energy. Once you get the grasp of Shadow Unique Gloves, you'll want to reallocate this aspect into one of your rings. Affixes you want to look out for are ranks to Twisting Blades, critical strike damage with imbued skills, attack speed, and plus stats. The unique here is Grasp of Shadow. These gloves are amazing for this build. Its unique effect will give you a chance to summon a Shadow Clone that mimics your attack each time you use Dash, Shadow Step, or Twisting Blades. In addition, its passive affixes will greatly increase the Shadow Clone damage, vulnerable damage, and Twisting Blades damage. For waste, we'll be using Aspect of the Protector. This aspect generates a barrier when you damage an elite enemy, giving you the opportunity to set up all your combos without having to worry about your health. This is an amazing aspect that becomes a staple in most builds thanks to its low cooldown and reliable effect. Affixes you want to look out for are damage after killing an elite, damage reduction from close and distant enemies, plus to stats, and plus to total armor. The unique you want to look out for pants is Temerity. These pants greatly increase all the healing received and increase all your stats. The best part of it, though, is its unique effect, which grants you a barrier when you heal beyond your maximum life. This synergizes perfectly with our aspect of Stolen Vigor, allowing us to maintain a barrier at all times, which removes the need of the aspect of the Protector. The barrier is great on its own, but it will also allow you to slot some aspects that depend on it, such as the Conceited aspect, which increases your damage, or the aspect of the Deflecting barrier that gives you a chance to ignore direct damage from distant enemies. For boots, we'll be using Ravager's aspect. This aspect is essential for this build as it provides you with an additional charge to Shadow Step, and also refunds a charge if you kill an enemy while using it. This allows you to freely use it to relocate during fights and increases the amount of unstoppable triggers available. Affixes you want to look out for are ranks to Shadow Step, ranks to dash, energy cost reduction, and plus to stats. For our two-handed ranged weapon, we'll be looking for the Blade Dancer's aspect. This aspect is also essential for this build, providing your twisting blades with the orbit effect. Affixes to look out for are core skill damage, damage to close enemies, vulnerable damage, critical strike damage with imbued skills, critical strike damage, and plus to stats. For your first one-handed weapon, you'll want the Conceited aspect, and this increases your damage by a percentage while you have an active barrier. You can use it with aspect of the Protector, but it becomes active all the time as soon as you get Temerity. Affixes to look out for are the same as just mentioned. And for your second one-handed weapon, you'll use aspect of Imitated Imbuement. This aspect massively increases the effectiveness of Shadow Clone, allowing it to mimic your Shadow Imbuement and also increases its damage. Make sure to cast Shadow Imbuement just after casting Shadow Clone to get full benefit during difficult fights. Again, the affixes you're looking for are the same as just mentioned. For your amulet, you want aspect of Stolen Vigor. This is the best aspect when it comes to survivability, providing you a massive amount of health regeneration that increases with each stack of the momentum that you have, making you almost immortal while on max charges. This only gets better with Temerity, allowing you to sustain max barrier at all times. One important thing to remember is that this aspect scales with your power level, meaning that you'll probably need to replace it as you progress further into the game, even if you got a max roll early on. Also remember that we are slotting this legendary aspect into the amulet to take advantage of the 50% increased effect. Affixes you want to look out for are cooldown reduction, percentage of dexterity, damage with dual wielding weapons, and imbuement skill damage. For our first ring, we're going to be using Aspect of Corruption. This increases the potency of your Shadow Imbuement against vulnerable enemies. Once again, thanks to the exploit glyph, this will be happening all the time. Affixes you want are critical strike damage with imbued skills, damage to close enemies, vulnerable damage, critical strike chance, and critical strike damage, as well as maximum life. For our second ring, we'll be using the Energizing aspect. This is great to generate energy when you're left fighting against a single elite enemy. Once you get the Grasp of Shadow, you should replace this with the Accelerating aspect. Gems we'll be using on the weapon are emeralds to increase critical damage against vulnerable enemies, rubies on armor to boost maximum life, and skulls to boost defensive values on jewelry. When it comes to the Paragon boards, we're mainly going to aim for rare nodes that increase our damage output, as well as glyph sockets that allow us to unlock their bonus effects. Please note that the order in which I get the nodes and the places where I put the glyphs is just a general guideline, and you can adjust it to your current needs. So for the base board on the first Paragon board, you'll want to start by taking a rare node on the right side and then taking the other two rare nodes near the middle. On the glyph socket, you'll want to slot the combat glyph and assign 25 intelligence around it. Its normal effect will increase the critical strike damage of your twisting blades, while the bonus effect will restore energy when you critically strike with them. For your second Paragon board, you'll take No Witnesses. On this board, you'll want to rotate until you have the No Witnesses legendary node on the top side. Make your way upwards, aiming for the Knowledge rare node, and get all the magic nodes around it. From here, turn right and get the socket where you'll slot the Exploit glyph. Its regular effect will increase your vulnerable damage, and once you allocate 25 strength around it, you'll be able to apply vulnerable to enemies as soon as you damage them, allowing you to trigger most of your passives and aspects from the beginning of fights. Make sure to also get the Training rare node on the right, as it'll be close to some strength nodes required for the glyph and will only require a couple of extra points to unlock. Now that the middle part is covered, you'll want to start heading left from the Knowledge node. Head upwards and get the Rune rare node and all the magic nodes around it. From here, continue up and turn right and head straight to the middle to unlock the No Witnesses legendary node. Once you have all the previous nodes, head to the board attachment gate located on the left to attach the next board. For the next board, we'll be using Eldritch Bounty. You'll want to rotate the board until you have the Imbuer rare node on the top right side. Head straight for it and take it in combination with all its magic nodes. From here, you want to start moving in a diagonal line towards the bottom left part of the board, taking the Eldritch Bounty legendary node first, and then the rare node Ready Supply and all its magic nodes. Once you reach the bottom, take the socket and slot the Closer glyph, which increases the damage to all Cutthroat skills and provides you with 10% damage reduction once you assign 40 dexterity around it. To finish the board, just head down and unlock the Potent Rare node as well as the Imbued Skill Damage magic nodes. Once these are unlocked, head to the bottom board attachment gate to continue to the next board. For board 4, we have Exploit Weakness. Rotate the board until the socket is located on the upper left-hand side. The first rare node you want to get is the Hunter-Killer node with all its magic nodes. Once you have that, go back and turn left, heading straight into the socket where you'll slot the Efficacy Glyph. Assigning 25 intelligence around it will grant you a 20% increased potency on your Shadow Imbuement. Once the glyph is complete, you want to go straight upward and take the Artifice rare node and all its vulnerable magic nodes, which will greatly increase your vulnerable damage. To finish this board, head downwards and get the Exploit rare node and all its magic nodes. Final tips. Remember to craft and drink Precision Elixirs, which increase both critical strike chance and critical strike damage, further boosting your overall damage. Remember to always save at least one charge of Shadow Step in case you get crowd controlled, as it provides you with Unstoppable when cast. This build works best when fighting multiple enemies at once, so try to group enemies together instead of fighting small packs, as this will both increase damage and energy generation. While Shadow Step is more convenient to relocate, you should try to use Dash as your first relocate mechanic, as it will increase your critical strike damage. So that wraps up our Shadowblade Perfected build. This is our level 70 version. I hope you can see that it works very, very well in Tier 4. We will keep putting out more Tier 4 builds. I think the next one is probably going to be a Druid or another Sorcerer build, so stay tuned for that. If you guys have builds you want to see, let me know in the comments below.
We'll be right back.